The scent of damp earth and old brick was my sanctuary. It clung to the air of our neighborhood, a comforting, grounding presence that spoke of endurance, of history patiently witnessing the march of time. I'm a history teacher, you see, a man who finds solace in the narratives of the past, in the quiet dignity of structures that have withstood generations. Our house, built in the early 1900s, with its sturdy walls and creaky floorboards, felt like an extension of my own history, a physical anchor in a chaotic world. So when Emily, my wife, started coming home late, smelling faintly of expensive cigars and even more expensive desperation, I noticed. It wasn't her usual crisp scent of lavender, nor the faint aroma of the artisanal coffee shop near her corporate law firm. This was something different, a subtle shift in the atmospheric pressure of our shared life, like the quiet change in a barometer before a storm. She'd brush off my questions, a quick kiss on the cheek that felt more like a dutiful peck, a mumbled excuse about a late client meeting. But her eyes, usually so direct and unwavering, now darted away like a bird caught in a sudden, unexpected downpour. I tried to rationalize it, to build a logical framework around the growing cracks in our routine. Long hours, high-stakes corporate law, maybe a new, incredibly demanding client that consumed all her mental bandwidth. But the cold dread in my gut persisted, a dull, persistent ache that whispered of something far more unsettling. Was it another man? The thought was a bitter, metallic taste in my mouth, a common narrative, almost cliché in its simplicity. But Emily wasn't cliché. She was a whirlwind of principle and passion, fiercely dedicated to her work, yes, but equally so to her quiet life, to our life, to the causes she believed in. What could possibly make her behave like this, like a stranger wearing her skin, a meticulously crafted facade, over something deeply troubled? The rhythm of our evenings, once a comfortable symphony of shared stories and quiet companionship, now felt disjointed, a broken record skipping over unspoken notes, leaving vast, hollow silences. The sound of her keys rattling in the lock each night, once a welcome chime, now produced a low thrum of anxiety in my chest. My suspicions solidified during a particularly contentious town hall meeting about the proposed rezoning of the historic district. Our district, the one I'd championed for years, battling tooth and nail against developers, writing countless letters, organizing community events. The one Emily had, in her rare moments away from corporate law, quietly supported with legal advice and connections. The mayor's speech was boilerplate, full of hollow promises of progress and opportunity, his voice echoing unnaturally in the cavernous old auditorium. But then the main proponent of the rezoning, a real estate magnate named Arthur Thorne, a man whose name seemed to belong in a gilded cage rather than a public forum, all sharp suits and even sharper eyes, took the podium. And there she was, Emily, sitting in the very front row, not with me, not with the passionate neighborhood activists whose faces were etched with worry and defiance, but directly with Thorne's legal team. Her face was carefully neutral, a mask of professional detachment so complete it chilled me to the bone. A suffocating knot tightened in my chest. What in the heck was she doing there? And why, after all our discussions, after all her past support, hadn't she said a single word to me about being involved with the very man trying to demolish our shared history? The air in the room, thick with suppressed anger and the stale scent of old wood and worn fabric, suddenly felt charged, buzzing with unspoken tension. After the meeting, as the room emptied into the cool evening air, I saw them. Thorne, with his slick, predatory smile that barely reached his eyes, placing a casual yet undeniably possessive hand on Emily's arm. My blood ran cold, a sudden rush of ice through my veins. She flinched, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor in her shoulders, a flicker of raw fear in her eyes before she quickly plastered on a practiced, polite smile. It wasn't the look of a romantic rendezvous, no clandestine passion. It was the uneasy, forced dance of a powerful predator and its reluctant prey. The scent of rain-soaked asphalt from the parking lot mingled with the harsh tang of deceit, a nauseating combination. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about infidelity in the traditional sense. This was about something far darker, far more insidious. This was about power. And Emily, my principled, activist wife, seemed to be caught right in the middle of it, a pawn in a game I didn't yet understand. The historic buildings around us, solid and silent witnesses, seemed to watch, their old bricks echoing stories of past battles, of principles fought for and lost. And a terrifying thought, cold and clear, began to form in my mind. Was she betraying me, or was she being forced to betray herself? The storm, I realized with a chilling certainty, was just beginning to gather on the horizon. The dread in my stomach solidified into a cold, hard knot. It wasn't just Emily's presence with Thorn, or even his possessive gesture. It was the flicker of fear in her eyes, the almost imperceptible flinch. That wasn't a woman having an affair. That was a woman under duress. My architectural mind, trained to see underlying structures, immediately began searching for the hidden stress points, the unseen leverage being applied. What was Thorn's hold over her? And why was it tied to our historic district? The scent of the city at night, usually a comforting mix of exhaust and damp concrete, now seemed to carry the bitter tang of deceit. I spent the next few days in a quiet fury, my outward calm a stark contrast to the churning storm within. I watched Emily more closely than ever. She was meticulous about her phone, always keeping it locked and out of sight. Her work calls seemed to stretch later and later, but her explanations grew increasingly vague. She was losing weight, too, and there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of expensive concealer could hide. This wasn't the glow of new romance. It was the slow drain of exhaustion, or worse, despair. The moral dilemma of invading her privacy, of prying into her hidden world, evaporated. This wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about understanding a threat, and possibly a rescue. My investigation began where I felt most comfortable, the digital realm. I started with Arthur Thorn. A quick search revealed his public persona, a philanthropic real estate titan, a shrewd businessman, deeply connected in local politics. But the internet always leaves traces. I dug deeper, past the carefully curated PR, into old financial records, obscure property deeds, and local newspaper archives stretching back decades. I used every trick I knew, the subtle queries, the cross-referencing of seemingly unrelated data points, the kind of digital forensics that most people don't even know exist. This was a game of shadows, and I intended to be the unseen player. Then, the first unsettling thread emerged, not about Thorn directly, but about his family. His grandfather, I discovered, had been embroiled in a massive land dispute decades ago, involving the very same historic district. A bitter, protracted legal battle that ended with the community winning, and the Thorn family suffering a significant financial and reputational blow. The old newspaper articles painted a picture of ruthless ambition and public humiliation. This wasn't just about a new development. It was about legacy, about a multi-generational vendetta. Thorn wasn't just buying land. He was reclaiming a defeat, erasing a stain on his family name. But the most chilling discovery came when I cross-referenced Emily's name with the old Thorn family legal records. Her maiden name, I found, appeared in a minor capacity in a police report from a student protest connected to that very land dispute, dating back to her college years. It was a small, almost negligible detail, buried deep in archived police blotters. She was never charged, just listed as present. But in the hands of a man like Thorn, it was pure gold. He wasn't just a developer, he was a blackmailer. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Emily's betrayal wasn't an act of infidelity. It was a desperate attempt to protect a past I never knew existed, a secret that could ruin her career, her reputation, everything she had built. The air in my home office, usually filled with the comforting scent of books and old wood, now felt heavy with the stale tang of a long-buried secret, finally unearthed. Thorn held her past like a knife to her throat, and I, the man who prided himself on knowing every brick of her life, had been utterly blind. The discovery of Emily's name in those archived police blotters, linked to a student protest during the original Thorn land dispute, left a bitter taste in my mouth. It wasn't just a secret, it was a ghost from her past, resurrected by Thorn to wield as a weapon. She had been so private about her college days, always vague about specific events. Now I understood why. This wasn't a casual indiscretion. This was leverage, a meticulously identified weakness exploited by a ruthless enemy. My blood ran cold. realizing the true nature of the threat. The scent of old paper and dust from the digital archives seemed to cling to my fingers, heavy with the weight of unearthed truths. My next step was clear. I had to understand the extent of Thorne's knowledge and, more importantly, the specific details of Emily's involvement in that protest. What exactly had happened? What was the secret that could ruin her career, enough to force her into this insidious arrangement? I dove deeper, not just into public records, but into academic archives, old university newspapers, even niche activist forums from that era. I used my skills to bypass dusty digital paywalls and navigate fragmented online communities, searching for echoes of that forgotten conflict. This wasn't about revenge against Emily. It was about dismantling the trap set for her. The puzzle pieces began to fit with grim precision. The protest had been against Thorne's grandfather's original development plan for the historic district. It was heated, escalating to civil disobedience. Emily, it turned out, wasn't just present. She was a fervent, if quiet, organizer. The crucial detail emerged from a grainy photo in a long-defunct student newspaper. Emily, much younger, but undeniably her, standing next to a makeshift barricade, a determined fire in her eyes. And in a separate, more official-looking university disciplinary report, hidden under a generic code, I found it. A charge of aggravated trespassing and property damage related to the protest, which was mysteriously dropped. The charges were dropped because her family, politically connected, had pulled strings, ensuring her record remained clean. This was the leverage. This was the dagger Thorne held to her throat. The metallic tang of injustice filled my mouth. Not only was Thorne seeking to reclaim his family's lost development, but he was also twisting Emily's principled past into a weapon against her. He wasn't just destroying history. He was twisting personal histories for his own gain. It was a classic move of the powerful, leveraging the past indiscretions of the vulnerable. My hands clenched around my mouse. The moral dilemma of revealing Emily's past was replaced by a singular, burning resolve. I had to expose Thorne's blackmail, not Emily's history. But how do you expose a man who traffics in secrets without inadvertently exposing the very secret you're trying to protect? The answer was simple: by making his secrets meaningless. The clock on my desk ticked relentlessly, each second a hammer blow against my dwindling patience. The scent of my lukewarm coffee was a bitter reminder of the long night, but clarity had arrived with the dawn. My strategy shifted. Thorne understood power and reputation. My revenge wouldn't be about physical confrontation. It would be about devaluing his currency. If I could expose the nature of his blackmail, the tactics he used, and tie it to a broader pattern of corporate ruthlessness, his carefully cultivated public image would crumble. He wouldn't be a philanthropic titan. He'd be a digital blackmailer, a relic of a bygone era, morally bankrupt and socially isolated. And for that, I needed more than just Emily's story. I needed his. I needed to find a way to trap the master of secrets in his own web. The cold resolution that settled in my gut was almost a relief. This wasn't about saving Emily from a lover. It was about dismantling a predator. Thorne's currency was secrets, his power built on the hidden vulnerabilities of others. My revenge wouldn't be a dramatic confrontation. It would be a meticulous, digital demolition. If he traded in reputations, I would make sure his was worthless. The silent hum of my computer tower at 2 a.m. was my new battlefield, the glowing screen my weapon. I tasted the bitter, lukewarm coffee, a companion to my sleepless nights, as I began to weave my own web. My strategy was clear. I needed to get inside Thorne's operations, to understand his methods, and ultimately, to expose them. I knew his public-facing corporate network would be a fortress. But no system is truly impenetrable if you know where to look for the human element, the overlooked backdoors. I reached out to my digital ghost, the IT wizard I'd sparingly used in the past for those tricky patent disputes. He operated strictly on a need-to-know basis, asking no questions, only delivering results for a hefty fee. I need a deep dive into Thorne's corporate communications. I typed into our encrypted chat, and anything you can find on his personal digital footprint. Think beyond the surface. Look for patterns, tools, anything that screams leverage. The information trickled back, slowly at first, then in a torrent of encrypted files. Thorne wasn't just a blackmailer. He was a pioneer in what amounted to digital psychological warfare. He didn't rely on brute force hacks. Instead, he employed a sophisticated, bespoke AI-driven data mining tool, codenamed Cerberus, that scoured social media, public forums, leaked databases, even dark web marketplaces, to construct intricate psychological profiles of his targets. It identified their deepest fears, their hidden shames, their personal relationships, even their digital habits, pinpointing the perfect pressure points. This wasn't just about a protest in Emily's past. This was a blueprint for universal human weakness. The sheer scope of it was chilling. The data revealed a pattern of previous victims. A rising politician whose campaign was sabotaged by a leaked, subtly doctored video. A rival developer bankrupted by a sudden, inexplicable smear campaign on fringe news sites. A prominent judge forced to retire due to anonymous threats targeting his family's private medical history. Thorne wasn't just reacting to opportunities. He was actively creating them, using information fatigue and the blurring lines of truth in the digital age to make his manufactured narrative seem real. He was a master of the unseen algorithm, twisting public perception like clay. The more I saw, the more I understood. This wasn't just about his family's legacy. It was about building his own, a legacy of absolute digital control. The internet, I realized, wasn't just a place for information. It was a murky, treacherous sea where a predator like Thorne could hunt unseen, pulling threads to unravel lives. How many others had he ruined, subtly, silently, leaving them to wonder what hit them? And how could you fight a ghost? Just as dawn began to paint the sky with a sickly gray, the final piece of the puzzle dropped into my inbox, a direct intercept from Thorne's encrypted corporate server. It was a live communication, a video conference transcript. Thorne, utterly devoid of his public charm, was addressing his inner circle. The mayoral rezoning vote is crucial. His voice, cold and reptilian, crackled through my speakers. Our leverage on Councilwoman Jenkins is solid. Her son's little TikTok habit. It's proving to be quite the incentive. She'll vote our way. My blood ran cold. Councilwoman Jenkins, a staunch opponent of the rezoning, a woman of unshakable integrity, had a son. A kid I knew from the neighborhood, just a teenager, always glued to his phone. Thorne wasn't just a blackmailer. He was actively manipulating the city's political landscape, turning digital vulnerabilities into real-world power. And Councilwoman Jenkins, like Emily, was now his unwitting puppet. The game just escalated, and I was now watching him pull the strings of my entire city. The city council vote loomed, a ticking clock in Thorne's twisted game. Councilwoman Jenkins, a woman I respected, was on the verge of being sacrificed on the altar of his ambition, her son's harmless TikToks weaponized against her. I couldn't allow it. My plan was set, not to expose the victim, but to expose the predator's method, his Cerberus AI, his intricate dance of digital manipulation. The silence of my home office was broken only by the frantic tapping of my keyboard, a digital drumbeat against Thorne's hidden empire. I started building the counter-narrative, a series of precisely timed, subtly coded messages designed to inoculate the public against Thorne's incoming attack. This wasn't about shouting. It was about whispering the truth so effectively that it became undeniable. I carefully selected images and video snippets, innocuous clips, common online trends, but each one subtly embedded with metadata that, to a trained eye, hinted at algorithmic manipulation. I crafted text that mirrored the innocent, slightly naive tone of a public awareness campaign about digital hygiene and media literacy, but laced it with rhetorical questions designed to spark suspicion about the origin of online narratives. How do you know what's real? Who benefits from your outrage? My target wasn't just the council, but the broader public, the very source of the information fatigue Thorne exploited. I needed to shift their focus from the content of the scandal to the engine behind it. It was like exposing the puppet master by making the strings visible. I deployed the first phase of my counterstrike through a network of anonymous burner accounts, spreading the digital hygiene message across various platforms. X, TikTok, even some niche local forums where community discussions thrived. The goal wasn't to go viral immediately, but to lay a subtle groundwork, to plant seeds of doubt that would bloom when Thorne made his move. The day of the vote arrived, thick with tension. The air in the City Hall auditorium was heavy, charged with unspoken anxieties. Councilwoman Jenkins looked even more haggard, her usual defiance replaced by a visible tremor. Thorne was there, too, a smug smirk playing on his lips, surrounded by his legal and PR entourage. He held court in the back, a silent conductor waiting for his orchestra to play. My phone, discreetly tucked away, vibrated with updates from my hidden network. The first phase was working. The digital hygiene posts were gaining traction, prompting small, but growing, conversations about media manipulation. Then, Thorne made his move. Just an hour before the vote, a barrage of anonymous posts hit social media. Heavily edited, out-of-context TikToks of Councilwoman Jenkins' son, implying drug use and reckless behavior, accompanied by sensational headlines on obscure news blogs questioning her judgment. It was classic Thorne, a seemingly organic viral smear. The digital noise was deafening. But this time I was ready. My second phase launched immediately. My algorithm, honed over the sleepless nights, now began to cross-reference Thorne's new attack with the patterns I'd uncovered from Cerberus. Simultaneously, I unleashed a torrent of counter videos on TikTok and X, not refuting the claims, but analyzing the method. Using his own AI's predictive influence data, I highlighted specific editing techniques, timing, and platform choices that mirrored Thorne's known modus operandi. I framed it as a case study in how digital disinformation works, using his current attack as a prime, real-time example. Notice how quickly this spread. One of my posts read, layered over a blurred image of Thorne's corporate logo. This isn't organic. This is engineered. The effect was instantaneous and chaotic. The public, already primed by my earlier digital hygiene campaign, didn't just consume the scandal. They began to question its source. Hashtags like #EngineeredTruth and #ThorneExposed started trending, turning the tide of outrage from Councilwoman Jenkins to the shadowy forces behind the attack. Thorne's smug expression slowly, imperceptibly, began to crack as he watched his carefully constructed viral campaign backfire. The architect was now dismantling his opponent's weapon in real time, using the very blueprints of its design. The vote was still hours away, but the battle for public perception had already been won. And Thorne, the master manipulator, was about to become the biggest scandal of all. The digital battlefield was a maelstrom of conflicting narratives. Thorne's attack on Councilwoman Jenkins was losing traction, drowning in the very information fatigue he sought to exploit. My counter-campaign, simple yet effective, had turned the public's attention from the manufactured scandal to the sinister mechanics behind it. The hashtags #EngineeredTruth and #ThorneExposed were now dominating the trending lists, fueled by an awakened, questioning populace. The air in the auditorium, once thick with tension, now hummed with a different kind of energy. A growing murmur of confusion and suspicion directed squarely at Thorne's camp. I watched him from a distance, a silent observer in the back rows. His confident smirk had vanished, replaced by a rigid mask of barely contained fury. He was pacing, whispering urgently into a phone, his eyes darting wildly, searching for the source of the counteroffensive that was unraveling his carefully laid plans in real time. The image of him, the puppet master losing control of his strings, brought a grim satisfaction. This wasn't just about winning a vote. It was about destroying his most valuable asset, his reputation as an untouchable manipulator. My phone buzzed again, a discreet notification from my IT wizard. A new file. It was a live feed, direct from Thorne's Cerberus AI's internal diagnostics. The system was showing critical errors, its predictive influence module rapidly degrading. My counter-narrative wasn't just exposing his methods. It was actively disrupting his algorithm's ability to function. By making the public aware of the manipulation, I was effectively corrupting their input data, rendering Cerberus's predictions useless. It was a digital immune response, triggered by the very information I had injected. The scent of fear, I imagined, was now permeating Thorne's own secure offices, a taste of his own bitter medicine. The mayoral vote began, a stark contrast to the digital war raging outside. One by one, council members cast their votes. When Councilwoman Jenkins' name was called, she hesitated, her eyes briefly meeting mine across the room. A flicker of something passed between us, recognition, perhaps, or a shared understanding of the silent battle being waged. She voted no on the rezoning. A small victory, but a significant one. The project was dead, at least for now. Thorne's face contorted, a flash of pure rage before he regained his composure, but the damage was done. The district was safe. Emily, though still lost in her own complicated dance with Thorne's blackmail, was, for this moment, free from his immediate pressure. The immediate threat was averted, but the larger war had just begun. Thorne wouldn't forget this. He would come for me, eventually, seeking to reclaim his shattered reputation, to punish the architect who dared to expose his dark empire. But I was ready. The taste of stale coffee from my thermos was replaced by the invigorating rush of success, a prelude to the battles ahead. I had saved the district, perhaps even Councilwoman Jenkins' career. But the real prize, the total dismantling of Thorne's network of lies, still lay ahead. I had fired the first shot in this unseen war, and the echoes of it were just beginning to spread across the digital landscape, shaking the very foundations of his power. The quiet satisfaction of seeing Thorne's plan crumble was short-lived, replaced by a chilling certainty. He wouldn't forget. The vote was a skirmish one, not the war. He now knew there was an architect working against him, a ghost in his meticulously designed machine. The air in my home office, usually a sanctuary, felt charged with an unseen tension, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. My victory had painted a target on my back. Emily remained oblivious, caught in the undertow of her own silent battle. She seemed a shade lighter after the vote, a tiny flicker of relief in her eyes, but the underlying anxiety remained. Thorne still held her secret, that old student protest, a weapon poised to destroy her carefully built career. My moral compass swung wildly. Did I reveal her past to free her from his grip, even if it shattered her public image? Or did I continue to fight in the shadows, hoping to dismantle Thorne's entire empire before her secret could be weaponized? The answer was clear. I had to protect her, but I also had to destroy him. My focus shifted from reactive defense to proactive offense. Thorne's Cerberus AI was damaged, but not destroyed. I needed to understand its core vulnerabilities, to find the single point of failure that could bring down his entire network of manipulation. I spent days dissecting the data I'd already pilfered from his servers, looking for patterns, for the fingerprints of the human designers behind the algorithms. Every line of code, every data point, became a piece of the puzzle. The scent of hot electronics and the faint hum of my server rack filled the room as I worked, a constant reminder of the digital war I was waging. The new discovery was unsettling. Cerberus wasn't just designed to identify and exploit weaknesses, it was designed to create them. It subtly nudged targets towards certain behaviors, fed them tailored information to influence decisions, even whispered suggestions through seemingly innocuous digital channels. It was a sophisticated form of digital gaslighting, making people doubt their own perceptions, subtly pushing them towards Thorne's desired outcomes. This wasn't just about blackmail. It was about covert societal engineering. The scale of his ambition was terrifying. The ethical considerations weighed heavily. If I exposed Thorne, the truth about his manipulations would inevitably touch many, including some of his victims who might prefer their vulnerabilities remain hidden. Would revealing the method of control outweigh the personal cost to those whose lives would be laid bare? What kind of world would I create by shining a light into such dark corners? And what would be the blowback? Thorne wouldn't just send lawyers. He'd send digital assassins, experts in reputation destruction, masters of the very art I practiced. Could I withstand that? Then, the final, chilling piece clicked into place. Hidden deep within Cerberus's diagnostic logs, I found a series of cross-references to a secure, off-grid server cluster. It wasn't connected to Thorne's public network. It was a private, highly encrypted vault, used for storing the most sensitive, politically damaging data, the kind that could bring down entire governments. And within its access logs, under a temporary and highly unusual access key, was a single, recent entry, Emily R., followed by a specific timestamp. Not your client, but her raw maiden initials. My blood froze. Thorne hadn't just threatened to expose her past. He had been preparing to upload the full, unredacted details of her student record to this dark vault, likely for a more devastating, future blackmail or strategic leak. He was ready to burn her. And that timestamp? It was from the day after the council vote, when he knew he'd lost. He was already retaliating, preparing his next, more brutal strike. The digital noose around Emily's neck was tightening, and Thorn was about to kick out the chair. The confirmation from Cypher, terse and to the point, felt like the turning of a massive, unseen gear. The file, Emily's file, was no longer just a digital threat. It was now out of Thorn's grasp, pulled into the ether, an unexploded ordnance ticking down to its public detonation. The air in my office, usually thick with the scent of old books and quiet contemplation, now hummed with the electric anticipation of imminent chaos. I had traded her tightly guarded secret for her freedom, betting everything on the principle that light, however harsh, ultimately dispels the darkest shadows. My focus shifted. With the data secured, the next phase was execution. Thorn wouldn't just be exposed. He would be systematically dismantled. I leveraged every contact, every obscure forum, every hidden corner of the internet I knew. My strategy wasn't a single, cataclysmic leak, but a relentless, cascading series of exposures. I would feed the information to various independent journalists, watchdog groups, and even a few anonymous hacktivist collectives I'd learned about through Cypher's digital breadcrumbs. Each piece would be released strategically, a drip feed of undeniable truth designed to build momentum, to create an unstoppable wave of public outrage. The goal was to devalue Thorn's entire currency. If his power came from hidden secrets and algorithmic manipulation, then I would make those secrets common knowledge and reveal the mechanics of his deception. I crafted a compelling narrative, not just of Thorn's blackmail, but of the larger, terrifying implications of his Cerberus AI, its ability to weaponize personal data, to engineer public opinion, to subvert democratic processes. I included the full scope, from the multi-generational vendetta against the historic district to the digital gaslighting of ordinary citizens, and the terrifying truth about his control over politicians and CEOs. The ethical dilemma of exposing Thorn's other victims, caught in his web, was a heavy one. But I believe the greater good, the dismantling of such a powerful and insidious threat, outweighed the immediate discomfort of uncomfortable truths being revealed. Emily remained unaware, navigating her days with a new, fragile hope after the council vote. I watched her, a ghost in our own home, knowing the storm was coming, but unable to warn her directly without compromising my operation. The lingering scent of her perfume, once a comfort, now felt like a fragile barrier against the encroaching tempest. What would happen when her own past, her youthful activism, became public knowledge? Would she understand the necessity of this sacrifice? Would she ever forgive me for making the choice for her? These questions gnawed at me, but the larger mission, the burning need to bring Thorn's empire to its knees, drowned out the doubt. Weeks turned into a maelstrom of digital warfare. The first tremors hit the news cycles, anonymous reports questioning Thorn's past business dealings, then a deeper dive into his company's opaque financial structures. Then came the bombshells. Leaked documents detailing the Cerberus project, its capabilities, its internal code names for targets. The term digital gaslighting exploded across social media. The public, already primed by my earlier work during the rezoning vote, reacted with a furious, visceral outrage. Thorn's carefully cultivated image began to crack, then shatter. Corporate partners began to pull out. Political allies distanced themselves. His stock plummeted. The full force of the exposure was a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts. Thorn, the master of reputation management, was now a pariah, his name synonymous with manipulation and deceit. His vast network of influence, built on secrets, crumbled as those secrets became common knowledge, stripped of their power. The scent of victory, bitter and exhilarating, mingled with the lingering dread of the inevitable blowback. I knew he wouldn't go down quietly. He would hunt me, but I had won the war. I had taken down the architect of shadows, not with violence, but with truth, leveraging his own currency against him. The long game, I realized, was the only game worth playing. I stood by my window, looking out at the historic district, bathed in the pale light of dawn. The old bricks stood strong, unyielding, testaments to endurance. Emily stirred in the next room. The fight, for me, had just begun in a new way. I had brought down an empire, but now I had to build a new future, brick by painful brick. The world was forever changed by the digital weapon I had unleashed, and so was I.